Shalom, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Unsubscribe, the Demand Drive podcast. I'm your host, Itai Amoza. Got my co-host with me, Alex Ellison. As always, looking bright and chipper today. Alex, how are you?
Bright and chipper, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. Is it the purple shirt? Is that what makes me seem like I'm in such a good mood?
It brightens up the whole room, you know?
Oh, great.
I'm excited, Alex. We've got a great guest with us today, Itai Amoza. He's the co-founder and CEO over at StoryDoc. Itai, how are you doing?
Doing great. Like not as good with doesn't have the matching shirt as Alex, but I'll try to kind of compensate with with some good energy. But great being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I feel like if we actually blended all of our shirt, like I've got the gray, Alex has the purple. Maybe if you blended that together, we could get something close to your shirt color. I don't have a good color theory guy. I don't know. Maybe the other way around.
Having gray that doesn't change the color of anything.
It mutes it a little bit. I don't know. Get at me in the comments for color theory stuff. I'm excited to have Itai here. We're going to talk about this fun little in-between period for a lot of SDRs. It's a big problem that I see a lot of reps having. It's obviously a problem, Itai, that you see a lot of reps having because you've built a company and a product to help kind of address it. But there's that like wishy-washy period in between when somebody speaks with a prospect and before you could actually set up a meeting, they ask for more information or they want to learn more about your company. So you have marketing send over some product sheets and white papers and all that good stuff. And there's like this weird disconnect that a lot of SDRs have with that process. So you've built something to kind of help address that and solve some of the common issues associated with sending someone some information and kind of losing track of the conversation and losing some engagement. So we're going to dive into that today. Very excited to do so. Before we actually jump into the meat of the conversation, let's learn a little bit more about just you in general, kind of how you got to this point in your career, what you've done up to this point. And then we can dive into more about StoryDoc and some of the problems you're solving.
Yeah, sure thing. So happy to share the journey. I can say that I've been in tech as an entrepreneur for like a good part of almost 15 years now. And actually started as a student almost by mistake. I was the founder of what it is like today's Israel biggest backpacking website. So that was kind of my trial by fire in terms of entrepreneurship. I'm very big kind of traveler, big into hiking and the wild, and kind of ended up turning this content into our entire website. That kind of got me into more and more customer facing and eventually ended up in sales and marketing and doing anything from demand generation to actual sales. And actually prior to starting StoryDoc, I was the VP revenue of a startup called Seek here in Israel, and kind of dealing from anything from the beginning of the funnel all the way down to customers, and quite a lot of my personal experiences kind of blended into what it is StoryDoc today.
Very cool. Very cool. I want to learn more about this backpacking site that you set up. I'm a big traveler as well. I not so much recently, but I've done a lot of I guess you would call them here in New England. We have a lot of mountains that you can hike that aren't super strenuous, but they're nice, scenic, like casual hikes. So I've done a lot of backpacking around here. So we can dig into that after the episode.
Yeah, we should. I think I think the only one I've been on the East Coast in the US would be Mount Washington. I think, not sure. Yep. I think that would be like it's one of the famous ones. But remember the scenery being amazing on the fall.
So it's fantastic. Can't beat New England in the fall.
Oh, amazing!
Awesome. So you went from building out a travel backpacking website through your sales and marketing journey. Now you built out StoryDoc. So talk us through what that is. Give us a brief introduction to sort of the platform that you built there, and realistically, like the problem that you're hoping that it solves for SDRs, AE, sort of that sales individual contributor.
Yeah, sure. So what basically StoryDoc does and what it was set out to do, was to really help SDRs, anyone that is trying to get a customer move forward down the sales process, to better engage their potential prospects and buyers in between those different calls and touch points. Like if you come to think about it, every time that we are on a call with a potential buyer, may that be a cold call or even communicating over email, we are sort of in control of the process. We can deliver a message, we can kind of communicate, listen to what they're saying, and try and kind of get them to move forward. But usually anything would always end up with that classic kind of, okay, thank you, but send me something. So it's usually like a mix of trying to blow you off and to seriously try and take a second to maybe get a few other folks on my own company to kind of hear this out and try and get a buy-in for if that's a demo or moving forward in the process. And when you really come to think about your customers in these cases, usually today's collateral that kind of comes down to the SDR from marketing would usually be like very kind of a standard generic PDFs, brochures, one-pagers and decks that are really not effective to getting the other side excited to start with, nor it's really effective in getting them engaged and moving forward with you in the process. So what we've built is a tool that kind of makes it very easy on SDRs to kind of convert their existing kind of static collateral into interactive decks and presentations that can effectively capture people's attention and give their buyers a very personalized and engaging content experience that kind of pushes them on that critical moment to move on to the next step.
Got it. And did you build StoryDoc out of like frustration as an entrepreneur? Maybe you've had that experience where you've talked with people and they give you that either brush off or that sort of objection of like, just send me some more information and I'll take a look at it. Did you build it because you recognize that there was just a big gap and a need for it? Kind of talk me through your idea behind like why this is a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, like I have to say that I think everyone in sales, like within their first month in sales, will start hearing that kind of send me something type of answer. So definitely out of a personal need. Like I was always extremely frustrated by the fact that when I was on the phone with someone, if that's a cold call, kind of trying to get someone to approve something, it was always so much easier to connect with their own, I would call it vibe or energy, but it's deeper than that, like really connecting to their emotional reason of why they're with me on that call. Like what do they need to move forward? And I always felt that, that regardless of how good would I be on that communication, they eventually do need to go back home and, create a use case for it. So get some buy-in, get someone from another department to look into this, maybe their boss. So anyway, like at that moment, like almost no matter how good was I on that call, you always knew that, okay, like this initial kind of hurdle was achieved, but now the real thing happened. And I always felt frustrated that I have no ability to actually make an impact. Like it really would go down of how good this person is in getting other people convinced and engaged. And that's where I kind of started in like experimenting with many different ways. And what kind of got us kind of thinking into what eventually ended up being StoryDoc was actually when we were trying to get a lot of relatively big enterprise buyers to buy into a data heavy product. And that's where like really that gap between what can we explain on a call to eventually what the real decision maker will hear from our own champion was so great that I knew that every time I was a lot on jumping on a lot of airplanes back then, pre-COVID times. And like I always knew that almost no matter what happens, whenever they say like, yeah, send me your slides and we'll discuss that, I knew that I have to book my next flight for a month later because nothing's going to happen if I'm not going to be there. And that's when we kind of started with my two co-founders to kind of start an experiment what like actually happens at that moment. And I have a very strong memory of like this revelation moment that I was coming out of, like I was in a taxi on my way to the airport and kind of actually browsing through emails, being frustrated that I just went back from a meeting that might not move anywhere, and actually going over decks and emails from my own team, because being a VP revenue, you do have a lot of budget, so you are on the receiving end of a lot of decks and proposals. And that's what I kind of realized. I realized that's what's going on with me right now. That's the moment, and that's the attention span your buyer or your prospect is really going to give your deck. And that's where it kind of hit me, that it needs to be for that moment, for like low intent, low levels of context and concentration, and still be able to make it meaningful enough for someone on their phone to move forward. And like long story short, it's been quite a lot since then, but that was the kind of initial emotion, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's something that is it's going to be hard for an SDR to know, right? Because SDRs are rarely prospected, right? They're sending a lot of emails, but nobody's reaching out to SDRs to sell them something, right? You reach out to their manager that you wanted them to use your tool. So I think that's really interesting. It's cool that you got to get that perspective and say like, oh, so this is what happens on the other side of it. So in doing that, a lot of the sort of correlation I see here is it's about what you can control as an SDR, right? That's, you can send as many messages as you want, but once you send it over, you don't really have control over it. So it sounds like what you're hoping to accomplish, or what StoryDoc kind of does, is gives more control over what happens with the content you send over, the information that they just requested to send over, right? You really want to make it like as compelling as possible, or what's the strategy there for really making sure that they read what you do send over and they're not like ignoring it like 99% of the decks that get sent over?
Yeah, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's 99%, but it's like very close to 90% when we started doing our research. Like that's, yeah, like most, like 90% of those decks that are actually opened would still, like people would still spend about 10 seconds before they would bounce off. So that's how hard it is for you as an SDR to actually engage someone. And I think SDRs realize this, and that's why in many cases I've done it myself. Doing cold outbound, rarely trying to use decks, just because I kind of given up on their ability to have any difference. And I think a lot of SDRs like these days are just not using the power content and collateral can give them on the outbound process. Just because they do that only if someone can ask you, yeah, send me a case study, or send me something, then they would use it. But this is really a wasted opportunity. And I think like for SDRs that are listening to us, you are the true kind of backbone of how a sales operation would look like. Like really the kind of the hardest part of the process with the least kind of level of goodwill from the prospect side. AEs get the spoiled kind of well nurtured folks already, and at that phase it's all about empathy. Like and I know it's hard because you don't have a lot to work with when you're sending cold emails or maybe a cold call, but it's really about putting yourself in the shoes of your prospect buyer and how would they experience your email right now or getting that call from you, and usually really digging into what they would need to move forward. Like, because all of us are busy, even everyone that is on the receiving end of any kind of outbound, like always have something else to do. So you're really fighting for a very limited, narrow attention span. And let's say that you've written a state-of-the-art email with a great subject line. Someone would actually give you those 5-10 seconds of attention. Now, the entire question is, how can you make those 10 seconds turn into a minute of truly listening to what you have to say? And once you get that, it's really like thinking about it like a funnel. Once you earn that minute, and if that minute has been with high value, that's where you basically got them. That's where you can really turn on the heat and go for the more complicated materials. So that's what you see, that when you really look at one-pagers, for example, the most successful ones are built just like the beginning of a new Netflix series. Like usually they start with like a very big visual promise, like something very clear that you immediately can correlate with. It sends you to if I'm like, they're going to do a 60s style show on Netflix, like the opening kind of cover of that series would send me immediately to that time span and to that time period. That's really kind of tapping into my initial like subconscious decision: is this for me or not? So the key thing would be to kind of start with something that really sends them into the right emotional track. If that's their industry, or if you're selling a platform, kind of clarify that this is what you're doing. And then what we usually call the second hook. Like usually that would be a video or like something more like lightweight, engaging. That would be the second moment that all of us take a decision: is this interesting or not? Like most people will browse through something new, gets like the orientation phase of figuring out, is this interesting? And if you give them something to hang to, that's really like taps into the psychology of those decisions that someone takes even without knowing it. So like really kind of figuring out the kind of the prospect psychology would go a long way in terms of like turning your efforts into something successful.
Yeah, that resonates pretty hard with me, because I know we talked about this during the pre-show a little bit, but I have a folder on my computer of all of the different assets, one-pagers, white papers that SDRs have sent me over the past few years when I inevitably have to give that, like, hey, just send me some information kind of objection or brush off to them, because either A, I don't care, or B, I really do need something, like you say, I really do need something to take back and kind of show to other stakeholders internally, or review myself to see if it's worth my time. And out of those dozens upon dozens of white papers and assets that I have, I've probably read 10% of all of that at the most. And that's because initially they don't have either that first hook, or it's not relevant to like me personally. And I think that a lot of times, you mentioned this, like that sort of life cycle of someone saying like, hey, just send me some information. It's an SDR who goes to marketing or goes into their collateral folder and they find what they think is the most appropriate piece of content that already exists to send to this person, but it might not be an actual perfect fit, right? Like, I'm a director of marketing. I do a bunch of other stuff on top of that, but it's pretty broad. And if someone says like, well, marketing people resonate with this piece of content, so I'll send that to him, it's personal, but it's not really personal or hyper relevant to what I do on a day-to-day basis, because they don't know. We've had a very brief conversation. They just assume that this white paper is a good fit. So they shoot it over. I look at it for 10 seconds and then I file it away and I never talk to them ever again. And that's like this death cycle that a lot of reps fall into because they don't have the ability or the capacity realistically to dig into, okay, what do you actually care about? Like you were saying, what resonates with you? How can I make your job easier? How do I put myself in your shoes and deliver something to you that kind of convinces you, I know what I'm talking about. I know I can help you. Here's how we do it. There's like that disconnect that I see a lot of people doing. And obviously it's a problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, like totally. And I think it's hard. Like it's really hard to get to someone that, especially if you're selling to people that are much more senior than you've ever been. It's extremely hard to really empathize with their decision-making process. And I think too often, like reps would try and just be more and more pushy as the only way they can kind of get you into something. And then you're really like, yeah, okay, you might score that meeting at the end of the day, but it wouldn't be successful, or the person on the other side wouldn't really come in with the right context in place, or maybe just might not be the right person to talk to. Like, yeah, you were so pushy and they were like feeling bad for you, so they kind of took the meeting. But eventually you just discover, like later in the process, that you're not talking with the relevant budget holder and so on. And that's exactly where I would say that analytics and data would go a long way. Like what we've seen is that most people, like most SDRs, they just work blindly. Like they would just hammer around a bunch of emails, try and kind of go through a long list of cold calls or like LinkedIn messages, but never kind of stop and ask themselves if like what exactly have worked for me in the past. When I was sharing, let's say, a case study, does this case study was more effective or not? Like, have they even bothered looking into it? And many cases, it's more of like a guesswork or like a feel of like, maybe a more senior SDR kind of told me, yeah, everyone likes this Amazon case study. It looks impressive. Or
Amazon, how could you not?
Yeah, exactly. Or like you always oftentimes hear like, yeah, like just like one single prospect kind of told you, oh wow, that this case study was really helpful, and then that's it. Like that's gonna be your go-to collateral for the rest of your career. So really the idea is to kind of break that darkness, like put them, like take them beyond the I'm just like have no idea what's going on that very second we went off the phone. And that's where the ability to have analytics really comes in as the kind of the complementary aspect. So one side is how can we create for our prospect the best possible experience in discovering why they want to take a meeting, but on the other side for the SDR, to give them full visibility of how serious the other side is. Like how much time have they spent on each section? Where have they looked at? What were the areas that nobody cares about? You can then, never try that again. And really like data-driven reps can really get to a lot more, like the ROI and like time for their money, just based on like optimizing on what really works.
Yeah, I like that. And it's one of those things that I think takes the whole team effort. Like you can have an SDR who has a good idea and, it's anecdotal and maybe it does work for the whole team, but sort of compiling that data, especially if you have enough of it from enough conversations to have an actual idea for why something works, I think is that extra step that a lot of teams think about and kind of strive for, but it is an extra step that a lot of teams struggle to get there. Do you have any advice for any teams that are maybe even on the smaller side, they don't quite have enough data, how they can do the right kinds of research to make sure that what they're sending is the right kind of collateral without having as much data as they'd ideally like to have?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think it's most anything is like adopting the notion that this is still discovery. Like, and when we're saying discovery, it's not like you, the SDR, doing some bad technique discovering if they have a budget and that's it. You need to realize they are discovering you just the same. Like, they are trying to figure out if like spending more time with you or with your company or like proposed solution is a good fit for what they need or what they need to do. And that's where data comes in, I think, very handy in that context. And then even a bit of data could really help if you really turn on the empathy level to the maximum and really try and figure out how the other side is discovering you. And that's why even if you have very basic CRM tracking, for example, you might be able to see if they would kind of revisit the website or like get back to your email quite a few times. That usually is a great indicator that they are showing it internally, for example. And like really try and really kind of use the even the little data that you have to just get a picture of where this person is stuck right now, because it is an individual decision. Should I spend 30 minutes now listening to a demo? Like, nobody wants to be sold to, and the whole point is how can we kind of give them the ability to make an easy decision. And there's quite a lot of good tools today in terms of like being able to kind of to monitor the basics of like how into it are they. What I would say is like I wouldn't just like try and keep hammering people with more and more messages. Like, there is probably something they need that you haven't delivered, and like coming back with that would usually be the best kind of way of unblocking like a stuck prospect.
Yeah. What I hear from you realistically is that there's like this level of relevance and personalization that you have to have. So you have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes and really understand, like, if I were them, what would I want to see to kind of build up some trust or credibility in what we're doing here to get them to take that next step. Like, a lot of SDRs don't put themselves in that mindset, and that could help a ton. But it also needs to be in some capacity frictionless in a way that, like, I'm not bombarding you with 15, 20 messages about the same thing over and over again. I'm giving you an easy way to learn more about the thing that you should learn more about to get you to that next step. And like you said, it's not easy. It's incredibly difficult to figure that out, but it's a full team effort to sort of compile all of the data and insights and examples that you have to make those best assumptions that if I'm talking to Alex, I know that a specific piece of content will resonate with him more than if I'm speaking with you, Itai, so that I know that post-call, what I send him theoretically should be more of a driving force to get him to that next step, booking a demo, having a second call, whatever it might be. And it's going to be different than what I would send to you and the frequency at which I would send it. And all of this stuff is incredibly complicated, but when you kind of nail it, when you have it down and the whole team works cohesively to figure it out, you're able to be a lot better at that conversion rate of like, send me some information to actually getting someone at a demo, rather than just send me some information and kind of the classic, like, yeah, they've been in my nurture sequence for the past 6 months. I've sent them a bunch of emails. They've never got back to me. Maybe at some point they'll reach back out, but like kind of a lost cause for a lot of reps. So I don't know if there's like a question that I have in there, but this is just kind of what you talked about it. Something that I am curious about, the team effort thing. Alex, you brought it up, and Itai, you were talking about it, but like, how involved is, if you have a data science team, your marketing team, like operations, how involved are these other teams to sort of figuring out what collateral makes the most sense for what persona? Like, are they actively involved in helping reps in a lot of cases send this out correctly and kind of bucket it correctly? Or I know a lot of organizations kind of like don't even let SDRs see that side of the business, and it's just,
exactly,
I want this collateral, here you go, use it. Like, where do you see the best kind of mix of all of these teams working together?
Yeah, like I think that that's an excellent point, AJ, actually, because like the honest and sad truth is that in most cases there's a very kind of big disconnect between the people creating the collateral, which is marketing most cases, and the SDRs as the people that are trying to use it for their for an actual outcome. And there's not like we're as you can imagine, we see a lot of organizations that kind of help them make that transition into more effective selling with collateral. And you see that almost always that is like people on the marketing, when we do our own discovery, usually don't have good answers of what SDRs need or what SDRs are usually kind of being asked for. So there is a level of kind of like everyone else kind of thinking it's the other person's responsibility, and like the way at least we see this as this is an SDR tool. This is for the SDRs, so they should own it, and they know they are the only ones that can know and say what they need to get the other person to move forward. And that's what like we were always kind of very big on, like giving as much kind of freedom to SDRs as possible, kind of basically unlocking them from those closed generic PDFs that are very comfortable for marketing to deliver. Yeah, like I've just done this one pager for you, like go get it, it's up here on the cloud, and I'm done basically until I'm gonna produce a new one pager for another product that is coming out. And rather kind of look at this as, again, kind of tying it back up to helping the specific buyer to take a decision with this one pager. So basically allowing reps to personalize and tweak in the edges of any given piece of collateral. It's what we've seen that successful teams do in terms of eventually getting more out of their outbound activity. Like once you suddenly don't land on a very generic one pager or a brochure, but it would say, I don't know, Alex, see how we can help so-and-so do that. And that is that little bit of personalization from the buyer psychology side is all they need to feel suddenly 10 times more committed to actually reading what you just shared with them. That would be maybe the kind of the most effective trick pretty much any organization can implement overnight. So kind of allowing reps do that little kind of, personalization on the top, just like as you would do on an email, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like everyone knows personalization is good, right? But like there's a level of like, yeah, we all know it's good, but like still not everybody is doing it. And when there's like little tweaks that you can make where it is just as simple as putting the person's name and their company at the top of a seemingly static piece of content. Obviously it's not static, dynamically you can change that, but like it's made for you, right? Like it gives you the sense that like, oh, we talked about something. You went back to your team and you figured out what would best suit my needs based on our conversation, built a piece of content and sent it to me. I'm 100% more likely to read that than, just a static, classic one pager that marketing put together that, they're like, good, cool. Like you said, we built it for this product. Now we'll build it for the next product. And that's just the way it's going to be. And it's not going to change for the next 2 years until I'm told I have to change it.
Yeah, and I can even give you an example that we were shocked by it. Like we had a few it's been about a year ago, quite a few SDRs coming back and saying like, hey, we want to add a personal note to our StoryDocs. So basically starting the one pager or that brochure with like, hey, AJ, following our conversation, here's the one pager I drafted, blah, blah, blah. And like at some point we just added it because we heard enough people kind of ask for it. And that immediately overnight became the most popular kind of personalization way. And we were really blown off by how effective that was. And when you started interviewing buyers receiving these one pages with that personal note, the main thing they say is that I clearly realized this person listened to me, or like this person kind of really bothered to do their homework before reaching out. And this, you would be amazed. Like sometimes it would have been the most generic personal note ever. But because people are so like saturated with the easy personalization, like those first names and emails and your industry name or like some sequence, the fact that you actually open up a deck that you and then it kind of has the person's image and it says like, hey, following our conversation, this is what I want you to see. Really excited to kind of walk you through the solution. That is all people need to kind of be reminded that there is a person on the other side. And when you actually look at conversion numbers, usually the uplift was between 20 to 25%. So like something that is like exactly. So we were wowed by it, and kind of that's what was like a very big aha moment for us to kind of realize how powerful that barrier, that kind of, like the when people can evaluate something new, when you get a brochure, you put like a fence between you and the content, because you feel this was not made for you. And any trick that a creative SDR can do to kind of break that barrier, that's going to take them a long way in actually getting someone's attention.
Yeah,
that's great.
I really like how you mentioned like there's a person on the other side, which sounds obvious, but as an SDR, you go through, you're calling so many people, right? There's not really a person on the other side. But to the prospect, they're dealing with the same thing, right? Especially if they say like it's a short conversation, it's like send me some information. They're not gonna go find you on LinkedIn. They're not gonna like, I don't know, become your best friend all of a sudden. But if you can say like, okay, we had a very brief conversation, let me continue this personalized outreach in a unique way that they'll notice and appreciate. I think that goes a lot further than an SDR might realize in building that rapport and building that trust that is what leads to the demo, to the close deal, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, like I can say that it's that, and like I think the last bit that would usually make a big impact would be then like clarifying the next step. Like we as people that crafted the sales process that we're trying to get the person to go through are very clear usually what they should do or what should happen next. But you will be surprised how like cluttered that may feel for the other side. Like so for software products, that's usually very easy. Yeah, let's hop on a demo. But if you're in many cases reaching out for different agencies or services, it's really not clear what is expected from you as a potential buyer. So like really clarifying within that deck the full narrative of like, this is who we are, this is why we're impressive and engaging, then kind of clarifying what can we do, and then what should you do next, and like not giving up on those. Like a two-liner could do, like let's hop on a call and see the scope of your project, whatever, but don't count on the buyer to remember what you folks just agreed on the phone. Really never give up on like restating what is the next step on the deck itself. Just like really framing the conversation.
Yeah, we touched on it in the pre-show, the way that you described a lot of the current sort of like the current state of sales collateral is that a lot of it is an FYI, not a CTA. And I thought that was so powerful because it's true. A lot of times you'll get a deck, 3 pages, it goes over the value propositions and all that good stuff. And it's sent as like this is what we can do. And that's it. And then it's up to you, the buyer, to take that next step and follow back up with the rep and say, hey, that looked cool. Can we go ahead and set up a demo? And then there's that back and forth with emails and blah, blah, blah. If you could just dump like a book a time with us here, or like you said, in the piece of collateral itself at the bottom of it, reiterate what the CTA should be so it's frictionless for the buyer to take that next step. I don't know if you have any data on like how much that increases conversion rates, but I know in my mind, if it's easier for me, I'm going to take that next step directly in the piece of collateral rather than reach out to the SDR, be their best friend, connect with them on LinkedIn, like Alex said.
Yeah, like it all comes back down to the buyer journey. Like it really is like a tough decision on your future buyer to spend their time on something new. Like they immediately suspect that you're trying to push something into something that they don't need, and then exactly that frictionless kind of calendar embedded within your deck, or like a frictionless kind of demo recording or a short video that you can blend in. All these, whatever your next step may be. Like we've seen that usually the impact would be like around 15 to 17%. So not as important as personalization, but like as a pretty good kind of second place when it comes to like helping buyers move forward. And when you come to think about it, it makes a lot of sense because it's really just like instead of you having to answer back or anything, there's just like a one click away. Here's your calendar, just book a time exactly in that moment where they've gone through the journey of getting like full understanding of why they want. Like if the collateral actually done its job, that's the golden moment to nail it and actually get them booked instead of sending them back to drafting an email to you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think we've learned a lot today. I don't know. I kind of want to end the conversation, Itai, with this summary, if you will. If you want someone listening to this, say they're an SDR, individual contributor at a company, struggling with this. They don't really have a good process or systemized way of dealing with someone who says, just send me some information. What's like one big thing that you want them to take away from this episode that they can go back to their company, go back to their day-to-day, try out and see some positive change?
Yeah, so I would say the easy answer would be personalization, but that's I think like the biggest cliche in outreach. So by personalization I mean really kind of as an SDR, like really kind of come back and demand from marketing and or from your sales enablement, if those are the folks that kind of helping you out craft the actual process, not only like getting collateral, but also like getting key pain points that you can tap into. So like kind of what usually would your buyer need to push this forward internally. And sometimes actually I would go and ask the AEs because they see these buyers across the process. And they really, like, a good kind of software buyer would usually know, like, in their mind what is about to happen to them if they would move forward with you. And sometimes there is a blocker. There is like something small that you can say, like, yeah, I know that your compliance would probably want to know about blah, blah, blah. And boom, you've just got your magic tweaked personalization touch point that only like a very savvy AE, or if you have a very strong sales enablement team, could really tell you what's going to happen after you kind of passed over the lead. So I really wouldn't give up on that bit, and that would be your personalization that would win them over.
I love that. Yeah, the more, I think, SDRs, if you can empower yourselves more with the information that you have internally, the better you're going to be. I really like that. It's a good kind of nail in the coffin point for this episode. Itai, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate you sharing some insight and wisdom about StoryDoc and just in general, like what SDRs can expect to do to help increase conversion rates in that wishy-washy period of send me some more information land, as I call it. If people want to learn more about you, StoryDoc, continue this conversation, get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Oh, yeah, sure. First of all, my pleasure. It's been quite a lot of fun. You can always kind of, jump and say hi on LinkedIn or like follow us on LinkedIn. We post like a few times a week, quite a lot of data and insights from other teams using StoryDocs on like what usually how should you craft your outbound to be successful and to get better results. And always like invited to kind of hop into storydoc.com and kind of, give it a try with some of the templates inside. All of them are really built for outreach kind of professionals and what we've seen usually works. But always LinkedIn is the best place to kind of find us.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, listener, for listening. And remember to subscribe, to unsubscribe, get more insight and advice like this in your inbox. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Itai.
Thanks, Itai.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Unsubscribe, the Demand Drive podcast. If you want less of those nasty unsubscribe emails in your inbox, go ahead and check out some of the content we have to the left. And make sure that you subscribe to Unsubscribe to keep your SDR team in tip-top shape.